Okay. So you can download the notes on arrays. They're up on eCentennial. And we're just going to introduce the topic today. I'll have to continue it on next week. So anything I cover today on arrays, it's possible to show up on the midterm. Okay, but next week I'm going to get a little bit more in depth into arrays, and that won't be on the midterm. But anything we cover today, it's possible. Okay. So far, what we've been dealing with are variables. Okay, single variables. So if I wanted to store a number, I could say int number equals 1. Okay, and now I have a variable that stores one value. Okay, but let's say, or for example, I could have a string called name, and I could make it equal to my name. Okay, but let's say I need to store a list of names. Right? Let's say I want to store all of your names in my program. Okay? You think it would be a good idea to do something like this? So say string name 1 equals Carmen Brange. String name 2 equals John Smith. String name 3 equals Bob Jones. String name. Is anyone going to stop me anytime soon? This is getting really boring. So do you think this is a good way to do it? Right? Remember when I said this was referring to loops before, but I said if you find yourself doing something really repetitive, there's a better way. The computer has a better way for you to do it. Okay? So this is not what we want to do. We don't want to do this. Okay? This would make it really, really hard to program. So what we have another sort of, now we're getting into data structures. Okay? We're sort of leaving pure variables and we're getting into data structures that store more than just a single number or a single string. Okay? So now what we're doing is we're learning about arrays. Okay? So an array is just a list of variables. Okay? So if I wanted to store all of your names in a structure, of an array might be an appropriate data structure. Okay. Now, one thing to know about arrays is that the data is stored contiguously. What does that mean? In memory. Yes. So, yeah. So in memory, you can think of memory as looking something like this, like a table. Okay. Zoom out. So imagine this is the memory in your computer. Okay? And each one of these little boxes here is a memory address. Okay? So the first one would be the 0th spot. Then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we can address all of these memory locations, okay, in our program. So for example, when we declare a variable, let's say we say int number equals 10. So what we're doing is we're reserving a spot in memory somewhere, and we're putting 10 here. Okay? But now what we're doing is we're going to create an array. Okay? So the way we do that in C# is it's almost the same. So let's say we're going to create an array. We're going to say int numbers, okay? And that's all we're going to do for now. Okay? But the other thing that we do is over here on int, we're going to put 2 square brackets in front of that, on the right side of that int. Okay? So what that's telling us is that this now is no longer just a variable. It's a list of ints. It's an array of ints. So it's a group of ints. Okay? And so what we can do now is we could, what we're going to do is we have to use the new keyword. okay, which we haven't used too much yet in C#. Actually, so what we want to do is we're going to say this integer, this array is going to equal a new array, and the way we say that is we say int again with the square brackets, and we're going to put a number inside the square brackets here. So what we're going to say is we're going to create an array with 5 spots in it. Okay? So what we've essentially done by just doing this, okay, is so this is our memory now, and so what we've done is we've reserved 5 spots in memory. Why can't I? Oh, I gotta do. Let's change the background. Borders and shading. Okay, so we've reserved these spots now. This spot for memory for stuff that we're gonna stick in here. Okay, and so what we can do now is we can access each one of these little spots in memory. Okay, and the way we do that is we'll say numbers, so we reference it just like we reference other variables, but now we're going to use our square brackets, okay, and our semicolon. Okay, now here's the thing. Our list, the count starts at 0. Okay, so what that means is, so I've created a label called numbers. And what it's pointing right here. It's pointing at the start of this position. Okay? So what we're saying, when I say numbers 0, and then I could say equals 15, for example. Okay? So what I'm saying is I'm saying go to the area in memory that I'm pointing to with this label, which is right here. And then it's saying from that location, move over 0 spots. So that's going to put us right here. Okay? So what this command is doing is it's saying, okay, put the value 15 in that spot. Okay? Now if I do this, let's go one line down and say numbers 1 equals 20. What's that going to do now? This one here? What's it going to put? 20. Okay? Now what if I do this? What if I say number 4 equals 30? What's going to happen now? The last box, this one here, right? What's going to be put there? 30. So why? But this is the 5th one. Why is 4? It starts from 0, right? So when we say number, it's starting here, and it says from here, move over 4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, there we go. Okay? Now what if I said this? What if I said label 1 dot text equals number 4? What should go in? 30, right? Okay? So notice how, see the memory here. So let's fill out the rest of this. Let's say number 2 equals 21, number 3 equals 22. Okay? So this would be 21 and 22. So notice how all of these numbers are right beside each other in memory. Okay? There are other data structures that we won't get into in this class where you don't need to store everything right next to each other. But we're not going to talk about that in this class. So for now, this is probably our first and only data structure that we're going to learn about, other than maybe we're going to talk about objects a little bit more. But with arrays, the data is stored contiguously. So that means it's right next to each other. Now here's the other rule about arrays. each item in the array has to be of the same type. So could I do this? Is that going to work? No. That's not going to work. Every item in my array, so in here in memory and here in my code, has to be the type that I created. And they all have to be the same type. Okay? Okay. So let's go to some actual code now. So I'll save this. Okay. So let's open up Visual Studio. And so we'll stick with this project that we've been working on so far. Okay. So let's go to our form. And let's move our label up here, just because. Okay. Now, in our button handling method, okay, we're going to declare an array. Okay. So we're going to say int, and then we have to put our little square brackets. Okay. Int, and we're going to call it my first array. Okay. And then we're going to set it to equal a new int. Okay? And we're going to put 20 slots into our array. Okay? So now this is a list of arrays that can hold how many integers? 20 integers. Okay? Okay, so now there are a couple of ways we can, so let's go back now to our demo here. So what we've done now is we've taken 1, 2, 3, how many cells do we have here? I think there's about 10. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, 10. So we've taken 10 of these cells, and now we've saved them. We're saying, okay, we're gonna in the near future, we're going to store some data here. So we are reserving these spots in memory. Okay? And each one of these slots is big enough to hold an integer value. Okay? So that's what we've done now. So now let's go back here and let's start initializing some of the values. So there are a couple of ways of doing it. But one way is we can say my first array, and then we use the square brackets. And then we can put the number of the slot, the index, inside the square bracket. So let's say I want to set the first slot. I want to set the value. So what number do I put inside the square brackets? 0, right? Always remember arrays start counting at 0. Okay? So we put 0 in here. And now this is just like any other integer variable. Okay? So now we just treat it like a variable, and we'll say equals, let's put 10 in there for now. Okay? So now, so let me comment out this for loop here. So if I say label1 dot text equals my first array 0, and then I have to convert it to a string, what's that going to print in my label? 10. Right. Okay, so I click there, and oh, there's 10. Okay, let's initialize some more. So let's copy this. I'm going to copy and paste this a couple of times here. And then I'm going to set this to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's make it 10. 9, 10. And so let's make this 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20. Okay. Does everybody have that? Okay, everybody caught up? So, what if I change this index from 0 and I change it to 6? What will print now? What will print? 16. There we go. Now we can debug and we can inspect our array. Let's do that. So I'm putting a breakpoint right here. Okay? And so my code's going to stop now right here when I run. So I'm going to run it. And now I'm going to click my button. And so the code is stopped here. I can hover over my array and see I can click this plus button and I can see all the values inside my array. So see how there's 20 slots there? And the first 10 go from 10 to 20. Okay? Okay. Now, here's the million-dollar question. Well, I'll give you a statement and then a question. So the beautiful thing about arrays is that you can use loops to iterate through them. Okay? So if we want to what if I had an array that was 2,000 slots long? Am I going to be able to, should I be going through and accessing each individual array index like this? If I have 2,000 indices? No. So, okay, here's the million-dollar question. We've learned about 2 types of loops so far. What types of loops have we learned about? For loop and a while loop. So which one of those should we use to iterate through a for loop? Sorry, I just gave you the answer. Which one of those loops should you use to iterate through an array? A for loop. Why? Why a for loop? We know how many times we want to loop. Why do we know that? Yeah, we know the size of our array. Okay, so let's do this. Let's comment out this stuff. Instead of doing this is the long way. Let's set up a for loop now. Okay, so how do we do a for loop again? So we put the keyword for, and then we have our brackets and our braces. Okay, I always like to do that first. Then inside our parentheses, we're going to give it an integer that we're going to start at 0. Okay. And then we're going to say while I is less than, and now we could, because we know the value here, we could just put 2,000. Okay? But actually, remember, arrays are an object that come with many properties and methods. And one of those properties is the length. Okay? So now what I can say is, so this is saying keep looping while I is less than my first array dot length. So what is the value of my first array dot length? No, 2,000. Because even though the indices go from 0 to 199, there's still 2,000 elements. Right? It's counted. Yeah, exactly. So we start our for loop on 0, and we go until we hit the length. Okay, and then we're going to say I plus plus. Okay. Now inside our array, so let's initialize our array values. Okay, we're going to initialize 2,000 array values using our loop. So what we're going to say is we're going to say my first array, and then what are we going to put inside our square brackets? Length? Okay, so you say length and you say I. What will happen if we put length in there? Yeah, I. Because if we put length, it's just going to keep overriding the very last thing over and over and over again. But if we put I inside our square brackets, I is going to change every time it goes through the loop. I is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 1,199. Okay? So now let's make the value of each of those slots, let's set it to be I. Okay? So now let's run it. So what's going to be stored inside our array? Let's see. Let's run it. So we'll stop it and we'll start it again. And it's going to break down here again. Okay, so we're going to click this. And now, so we have our breakpoint. And now let's inspect our array. So we'll go over here. So see, it shows us it has 2,000 indices. Okay, so if we click our plus, now look, we can see all of the values have been initialized. Okay, all the way up to 2,000. Okay, imagine if we had to type that out. My first array 11 equals 11. My first array 12 equals 12. Right? You'd get carpal tunnel syndrome. Your hands would seize from all the typing you have to do. Okay? But what we've done is we've saved ourselves from doing that, and we've used a loop to process our array. Okay? So now let's print all the values in the array to our label. So how might we do that? What are we going to have to do now? Label, okay, label 1 dot text, okay. Equals what? Okay, equals my first array. Whoops. Square bracket. I, okay. ToString. Okay. What's that? What am I forgetting here? I need something around this. I need my for loop. Because in order to get all the data out of my array now, I have to loop through it. So what I have to do is I have to create another for loop. Right? For int I. What am I going to set I to be? Because I want to iterate through all 0, exactly. All the values in my array. Okay? And then I'm going to loop while I is less than what? Sorry? Yes, exactly. My first array dot length. Okay? And then I'm going to increment I by 1 each time. Okay? So now I have this this for loop. Is this going to be enough? Yeah, more or less. Let's see. Oh, actually, we have to add this in here. Otherwise, we're just going to have 2,000 in there. Okay? And then also, let's put a space between each of the letters, each of the indices. Okay? And let's run it. Oh, it's going to take a second. What did we do here? Oh, it's almost there. So see, it actually took some time. So now when we... Come on. Oh, it is running. Okay. I don't want this Camtasia Studio. Okay, so now when we run it, we should have. Oh, no. See what I've done here is at the end I've then clobbered everything in my label. So let's stop it. I'm going to comment out this. So the only thing I have in my button click event now, oops, is so I define the array, then I initialize the values, and then I'm printing them to the text box, to the label. Okay, let's try it. Let's press it. So now it's going to take a little bit because it has to do something 2,000 times. Okay. And probably there's a more efficient way to do this, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Is it almost done? What's going on here? Where are we? Okay, let's just look here for a second. Why is this not working? Let's try it again. Or let's do this. Instead of writing directly to the label, what we're going to do is we're going to create another string called temp, and we're going to make it an empty string. And then instead of concatenating to the label, we're going to concatenate to temp. So we're going to say temp equals temp plus the rest of our array that we're turning into a string. And then just at the end, we're going to say label1.text equals temp. Okay, and let's run it and see what happens now. Let's stop. Actually, let's debug it. We're going to figure out what's going on here. Okay, so it's working correctly. But why? I suppose it doesn't like my label. Maybe I'm probably putting too much text inside my label. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to create a text box, and we're going to click on our text box, and we're going to set it to be multi-line because we're going to go into the properties window, and we're going to select multi-line. We're going to make that true, and then we're going to expand this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my button, and I'm going to change from label. I'm going to say text box 1 text equals temp. Let's see if that works now. There we go. Okay. All these numbers that were stored in our array. Okay. So let me know if that's where I'm going to end today as far as lecture. But let me know if you're getting that. Let me see what you got. Oh, so you need to say here, you need to tell it what type of. And then there. So yeah, see what I've done there is instead of working directly in the text box, what I did was I created a string, an empty string, and then I concatenated it to the string, and then I put the whole string, I just dumped it into the text box. That'll be a lot faster because every time you access something on the UI, it takes a while, a couple of milliseconds, which is ages from looking at it from the computer's perspective, right? So we want to interact with the UI as little as possible, right? So first we go through the loop, and then we just dump all the text into our UI. Okay? Okay, I'm just going to run to the bathroom. You guys just work on that. We have about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to be at the end.